Regular routine was that Shannon, then they would.
Why was that relevant?
He didn't want everything to happen immediately.
Absolutely.
Like, it's
Insta,
only
that-
Thursday.
It's instant. They want everything to instantly happen. It doesn't work like that.
The righteous people on Reddit, baby, they are dissecting and divulging right now.
It all started with whispers, the kind that ripple through the entertainment world like a subterranean current. Shannon Sharpe, celebrated athlete, media personality, and the epitome of the American dream, was suddenly caught in the tangled web of allegations, leaked tapes, and salacious revelations that seemed plucked from the pages of a particularly scandalous novel. But this wasn't fiction. These were real people, real voices, and very real stakes. And as the layers began peeling back, what lay beneath was messier, darker, and more shocking than anyone could have imagined.
And that the was about handcuffs, choking, putting on dog collars.
Do you get those at Petco?
The bombshell began with the now infamous audio clip, a snippet of conversation that sent social media into a frenzy. In the recording, a male voice, allegedly Sharpe's, is heard making a chilling threat to a woman during what can only be described as a volatile exchange. The words were raw, visceral, and laced with an undertone of dominance that painted a disturbing picture. "If you say that word one more time, I'm gonna choke you," the voice snarled. And when the woman hesitated, the voice pressed further. "Yes, you do. I don't think you have a choice in the matter." It was the kind of soundbite that sent shivers through listeners, igniting debates over context, intent, and the line between private and public behavior. But the story didn't stop there. Far from it. As the audio gained traction, a Pandora's box of allegations began to emerge, each one more salacious than the last. There were claims of role-playing, unusual preferences behind closed doors, and text messages that read like the script of a risque drama. The messages reportedly sent by Sharpe's accuser were graphic and explicit, detailing scenarios that blurred the lines of consent and fantasy. On one hand, the texts seemed to support Sharpe's claim that their relationship was consensual and mutual. But on the other, they raised questions about control, manipulation, and whether the power dynamics at play were anything but balanced.
His attorney offered that up publicly.
To me, her turning it down shows that it's not a money grab.
No, it shows that it's a bigger shakedown.
And then there was Michelle, the woman who came forward claiming to have had a long-standing relationship with Sharpe, added another layer of complexity to the narrative. Her words painted a portrait of a man who was both charismatic and intimidating, someone who could charm a room one moment and unleash his temper the next. Michelle didn't hold back, recounting intimate details of their time together that left little to the imagination. She spoke of his preferences, his demands, and his alleged behavior when things didn't go his way. It was raw, unfiltered, and damning. Adding fuel to the fire were whispers about Sharpe's stylist, Hollywood, whose sudden departure from the former athlete's team had raised eyebrows long before these allegations surfaced. Hollywood, once a constant presence by Sharpe's side, was abruptly let go amid rumors of a falling out that many speculated was far more personal than professional. Was this just another piece of the puzzle, or a red herring in a story already brimming with intrigue? No one knew for sure, but the timing couldn't have been worse for Sharpe.
Shannon Sharpe says he's temporarily stepping away from ESPN in the wake of a $50 million lawsuit accusing him of rape. A woman filed suit against Sharpe on Sunday, accusing him of raping her twice.
The floodgates truly opened when comedians, known for their sharp tongues and brutal honesty, began to weigh in. Corey Holcomb didn't mince words, using Sharpe's nickname, Shay, as the basis for a series of scathing jokes that questioned his masculinity and personal life. Meanwhile, Mike Epps took things a step further, calling Sharpe Medadia's twin sister, and insinuating that there was more to his public persona than met the eye. These jabs weren't just playful banter, they were daggers aimed straight at Sharpe's reputation, reinforcing the perception that something wasn't adding up. Even Katt Williams, a comedian known for his own share of controversies, found himself inadvertently dragged into the fray. His appearance on Sharpe's show had sparked a wave of backlash from other comedians who accused Sharpe of exploiting their community for ratings. The resentment was palpable, and it didn't take long for the jokes to turn personal. The comedians circled like vultures, each one eager to take their shot at a man who up until now had seemed untouchable.
On Easter Sunday, a lawsuit was filed in state court in Nevada against Hall of Fame tight end Shannon Sharpe because he has become such a massive media star, especially in the past few years. The lawsuit is going to attract.
But the question remained, why now? Why were these allegations, some dating back years, suddenly coming to light in such dramatic fashion? Was this a coordinated takedown, as Sharpe's legal team claimed, or the long overdue unmasking of a public figure whose private life was far more chaotic than anyone realized? It was a question that hung heavy in the air, fueling endless speculation and debate. And then came the lawsuits. The first, filed by a woman identified only as Jane Doe, accused Sharpe of assault and coercion during a tumultuous relationship that allegedly spanned 2 years. The details, outlined in stark legal language, painted a grim picture of control, manipulation, and alleged acts that went far beyond the boundaries of acceptable behavior. And just when it seemed the story couldn't get any darker, another accuser came forward, this time with claims that stretched back more than a decade. Michelle Evans, a former partner, alleged that Sharpe had not only abused her, but had also gone to great lengths to silence her when she tried to speak out.
Like the Deshaun Watson cases where there were 20 plus plaintiffs and they weren't really sure who the people were who were making the claims. In this case, Shannon Sharpe knows exactly who it is because there had been, and it's clear from the statement issued by his lawyer, Lanny Davis, there had been some pre-litigation efforts to try to resolve this.
The media frenzy was immediate and unrelenting. Every detail, no matter how small, was dissected and debated by pundits, bloggers, and armchair analysts. Social media lit up with hashtags and hot takes, each one adding to the cacophony of voices trying to make sense of the unfolding scandal. And through it all, Sharpe remained defiant, insisting that he was the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by individuals out for money and revenge. He released statements, conducted interviews, and even hinted at taking legal action against his accusers. But the damage to his reputation was already done. What made the story even more compelling and unsettling was the sheer complexity of the allegations. This wasn't a simple case of he said, she said. It was a labyrinthine tale involving multiple accusers, conflicting narratives, and a media landscape that seemed to thrive on the chaos. And at the center of it all was Sharpe, a man whose larger-than-life persona now seemed like a carefully constructed facade hiding a much darker reality.
Tony Busby says this is key evidence in our case against Mr. Sharpe, so it will not be coming out. He will not be leaking this.
And saying basically it's going to come out during the trial.
Right.
If there's a trial.
If there's a trial, it will come out, which to me sounds like he's still dangling it over Shannon's head to say, we can meet, we can settle this, or we can go forward into a trial, and then the video is going to come out.
As the days turned into weeks, the story only grew more tangled. New details emerged, old allegations resurfaced, and the line between truth and speculation became increasingly blurred. The leaked tapes, the explicit texts, the public feuds, it all felt like an avalanche that couldn't be stopped. And yet, for all the noise and drama, there were still so many unanswered questions. What was the real story behind the leaked audio? Were the allegations a calculated attack on Sharpe's character, or a long overdue reckoning for a man who had managed to evade accountability for far too long? One thing was certain, this was a story with no easy answers and no clear resolution in sight, and as the world watched, transfixed by the unfolding drama, the question on everyone's lips wasn't just what had happened, but what was yet to come. Because if there's one thing this saga had made abundantly clear, it was that the truth, whatever it may be, was far stranger and far more unsettling than anyone could have anticipated.
That's how we found out about the lawsuit against Shannon Sharpe. Now, this one has some very strong allegations: sexual assault, sexual battery, assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The sexual components obviously give it greater gravity than a car accident or any case based on some sort of negligent slip and fall, something like that, where someone was just being careless.
And just when it seemed like Shannon Sharpe's world couldn't get any more chaotic, the lawsuits began to unravel with a level of detail that could make even the most seasoned Hollywood scandal seem tame. This wasn't just a matter of accusations anymore. This was a full-blown legal storm. With allegations that painted a picture too twisted for anyone to ignore, the courtroom drama wasn't simply about what happened in private, it was about control, power, and the lengths people will go to keep their secrets buried or drag them into the light. Take Jane Doe's case, for example. Her lawsuit wasn't just a list of grievances. It was a roadmap of manipulation, a timeline of alleged coercion that stretched across states and years. Her claims weren't vague, they were hauntingly specific, from the controlling phone calls to the alleged threats that left her shaken. According to her, Sharpe didn't just want a relationship, he wanted control, down to the very minute details of her life. And while his legal team scrambled to frame the relationship as consensual, the court documents told a very different story, with allegations of fear and psychological warfare that made it clear this wasn't just about two people who saw things differently. It was about power and, allegedly, its abuse.
The news, Shannon Sharpe. So you guys remember that video that Shannon Sharpe was saying was going to release?
Yes,
That
it did.
No.
Oh.
But the real kicker was the way Sharpe's team responded. Instead of softening the narrative or addressing the emotional core of the claims, they went on the offensive, releasing a series of text messages that they claimed would clear his name. The messages were explicit, to say the least, and they painted a picture of a dynamic that was anything but ordinary. On one hand, they seemed to suggest that Sharpe and Jane Doe had engaged in highly specific role-playing scenarios. On the other hand, they raised even more questions about the nature of their relationship. Questions that no one, not even Sharpe himself, seemed eager to answer directly. And then there was the bombshell from McKaylee Evans, who had her own legal battle with Sharpe that had been simmering for years before exploding back into the public eye. Her claims, though separate, added another layer to the narrative, suggesting a pattern of behavior that was as troubling as it was consistent. Evans didn't just allege misconduct. She accused Sharpe of using his influence and resources to silence her, to discredit her, and to ensure that her story would be buried under a mountain of doubt and legal jargon. Her lawsuit wasn't just about what she said happened between them, it was about the aftermath, about the price she claimed to have paid for trying to stand up to someone with far more power and reach.
According to reports, that video will not be released. Attorney Tony Busby came out and said that they are not planning to release that video, how they were dropping audio, because it's a very strong point of their evidence in this case, and they're going to keep it and use it as such.
Court.
Yeah. Now, that is interesting because Shannon Sharpe, remember, he kept saying he believes the video was going to come out. He believes the video was going to come out. So there's been a change.
The significance of Evans' allegations, however, stretched far beyond their personal history. In the lawsuit, she detailed incidents where she claimed Sharpe's influence extended into her professional life, allegedly blacklisting her from opportunities in sports journalism. She accused him of leveraging his connections to quietly shut doors, tarnishing her reputation in ways that were nearly impossible to undo. Emails, allegedly sent by Evans to former colleagues, which surfaced during the legal proceedings, revealed her frustration with being repeatedly turned down for roles she was otherwise qualified for. While Sharpe's team denied any involvement, the timing of her professional setbacks raised eyebrows, adding yet another layer of intrigue to an already convoluted tale. What made this even more explosive was Evans' claim that Sharpe had allegedly tried to control the narrative through selective leaks to media outlets. She alleged that certain stories, which framed her as unstable or vindictive, were planted by individuals within Sharpe's circle to discredit her before she could tell her side of the story. A former tabloid journalist even came forward anonymously, claiming they were approached with a tip about Evans' past, but refused to run with it because the source's motives seemed questionable. Whether or not these claims were true, they added fuel to the fire, casting doubt on both sides of the conflict and leaving the public to wonder who was really pulling the strings.
Another interesting thing too, and this is why I said, I've never seen anybody handle a situation worse than Shannon and his team. After this came out, we would have never known about that so-called video if it wasn't for Shannon Sharpe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shannon jumped out there and revealed that video existed. And he did that for no reason because they wasn't even planning on putting it up.
And just when it seemed like Evans' accusations were reaching their peak, another voice entered the fray. A former employee of Sharpe's, who claimed to have worked closely with him during his time at Fox, alleged that they witnessed behavior that could be described as intimidating and aggressive toward colleagues. While the employee stopped short of making direct accusations against Sharpe, their comments added weight to the narrative of someone who might have used their position to instill fear rather than respect. Sharpe's legal team quickly dismissed the claims, calling them baseless, and accusing the former employee of seeking their 15 minutes of fame. But the damage was done. The story was growing more layered and damaging by the day. The public, of course, was eating it up. Social media was ablaze with theories, memes, and heated debates, each one more polarizing than the last. Some saw Sharpe as a victim of opportunistic accusations, a man targeted simply because of his status and wealth. Others saw him as the embodiment of unchecked privilege, someone who had been able to operate without consequences for far too long. And then there were those who didn't know what to believe but couldn't look away, drawn in by the sheer spectacle of it all. It was the kind of scandal that thrived in the modern media landscape, where every tweet and Instagram post added fuel to an already raging fire.
That it's a claim against someone alleging that some rights were violated. And in most cases, what's sought is compensation in the form of damages to make up for whatever it is the person did. And there are all sorts of civil lawsuits, car accidents, defamation. We hear about that a lot because people get sued about things that are said about them in media.
But what made this story even more complicated was the way it spilled over into Sharpe's professional life. His departure from ESPN wasn't framed as a direct result of the allegations, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Official statements painted it as a mutual decision, a chance for Sharpe to focus on personal matters. But insiders whispered about mounting pressure from colleagues and executives who didn't want the network's brand tied to such a volatile situation. And while Sharpe's fans rallied behind him, calling for his return and defending his character, the whispers of discontent within the industry grew louder. How do you separate the man from the brand when the brand itself is built on personality? Meanwhile, Tony Buzbee, the high-profile attorney representing Jane Doe, wasn't backing down. Known for his flair for drama and his knack for turning lawsuits into media spectacles, Buzbee made it clear that this was just the beginning. He teased the possibility of more evidence, more witnesses, and more bombshells that could shift the narrative once again. And while Sharpe's team dismissed these threats as little more than posturing, there was an undeniable tension in the air. What else could be lurking in the shadows waiting to come to light?
Once again, I've never seen anybody handle a situation worse than Shannon and his team. Like they just handled it wrong from the whole beginning.
Yeah, well.
And as if the legal battles weren't enough, the court of public opinion was delivering its own verdicts in real time. Sharpe's attempts to defend himself, whether through social media posts or carefully worded statements from his legal team, were met with a mix of support and skepticism. For every fan who applauded his transparency, there was another who questioned his motives, who pointed out the inconsistencies between his words and the accusations against him. And then there were those who simply wanted to see the next chapter of the drama unfold, who didn't care about the truth as much as they cared about the entertainment value of it all. But beneath all the noise, the real question remained: what was the truth? Was this a case of a man being unfairly targeted? Of accusations being blown out of proportion in the pursuit of a payout? Or was it a reckoning, a moment of accountability for someone who had managed to avoid it for far too long? The answers weren't clear, and with each new development, the story only grew murkier. Every leaked message, every court filing, every public statement added another layer to a narrative that was already bursting at the seams.
Essence from Atlanta, him refusing to look at the evidence just gives me the impression that he wants plausible deniability, and maybe the evidence should be released so that way he does not deny his actions. I mean, if that was me, I would definitely want to look at the evidence to see what I did and did not do so I can maintain my innocence.
And yet, for all the accusations, counterclaims, and public outcry, there was still an air of inevitability to it all. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a collision of power, personality, and consequence, a story that felt bigger than any one person. And as the world watched, waiting for the next twist, one thing was certain: this wasn't over, not by a long shot. So what do you think? Are we witnessing the unmasking of a public figure who's been hiding in plain sight? Or is this just another chapter in the messy world of celebrity drama? Let us know your thoughts down below, and don't forget to stick around, because if you think this is wild, wait until you see what's coming next.